pronoun to refer to your consciousness?
Because it would be socially awkward to say we.
Okay. But so being socially awkward doesn't justify your belief in like that you should use I, right? Like why? Maybe because maybe the different parts of your consciousness belong to different entities, and maybe you should be saying we. Does truth matter to you, or is it just you just decide to use I arbitrarily to refer to yourself?
No, it's not arbitrarily. Again, it's functional.
Functional, but
Right.
but you don't know that it's functional because maybe your consciousness doesn't exist in one entity, and maybe other people don't exist, and maybe social conventions don't exist.
So
how is that functional if you don't know those things exist?
It's functional. That's what I'm saying. That's what you're really failing to understand is that you are looking for, you're wanting a basis of knowledge that is theoretical, and you're wanting to establish the theory as 100% sound and solid before you make any decisions, right? And I'm saying that it's not possible to have 100% solid sound theory, that all theories are just theories, and therefore we move through life behaving as if our theory is true until we learn that it's not.
All right, and so every time you move through life and every time you choose a different action, you're putting faith in something about that leads you to take that action, right? Like when you talk about functionality, you believe that something is functional. That's why you choose a certain action, right?
I'm not playing the semantic game of belief and faith with you. I'm not agreeing with you that I believe or have faith in anything, because you will always take it to mean something that I don't mean.
So you're saying you don't believe that things are functional?
Again, I'm not playing the believe, don't believe, faith, not faith, because those words mean different things to us.
So what does believe mean to you? What does it mean to you?
I'm not getting into this. I've said this to you at least 12 times by now, that belief is it's again a functional understanding, that as I move through the world, if I said we to people, I would have to have a lot of long conversations with them about the nature of reality, which isn't all that functional. I wouldn't be able to accomplish my job and do what I do in my day if I was constantly having conversations about why you say we instead of I.
So you're believing that it will not be functional for you, right? You believe that? That's what you believe?
I'm not playing that game with you.
Okay, so you don't believe it.
I'm not playing that game.
I'm not playing a game. I'm just talking. This is the English language and communicating concepts. So this is just the basics of logic.
It's not the basics of logic.
Yeah.
You are using the straw man argument, which is a logical fallacy. You're using the
in what way?
Circular logic, which is also a logical fallacy.
No, I use virtuous circular reasoning.
Yeah.
Right. Because I circle back.
Christians. Nobody in academia or nobody who teaches logic or teaches rational thought talks about virtuous circular logic. That's a thing that's made up by theologians.
So why do you reject the notion that everybody has presuppositions about reality that they circle back to understand reality? Do you reject that?
I do believe that most people do that.
Okay.
I also don't believe that it's required. I think that it's actually a flawed foundation for a functional worldview.
Okay, so you're saying, so when people take actions, or when you take actions, you don't actually believe something about reality when you take that action?
I use different, again, this is so circular. I mean different things when I use the word believe.
Can you explain that? Can you explain what you mean by believe?
I think that it's pretty likely, based on the experiences that I've had so far, that it's reasonable to make the logical leap.
Yeah, you believe that it's more likely.
I've done 1,000 times, when I do it the 1,001st time, it'll have the same result.
Right.
And again, it's
something you believe. You believe that it's more likely, right? Right?
I'm not going to use that word with you, because as soon as I say believe, you're going to take it to mean something that I don't mean.
Well, no, I'm saying you believe something. It's just you need to acknowledge that you believe that something is more likely than something else, right?
We mean different things.
So you believe that.
We mean different things.
And I'm saying you're not justified in believing that. And when you believe that, you can't come to truth. And you don't care about truth if you just believe whatever you want to believe. Just because you choose to believe it. It's just like you just arbitrarily choose to believe certain things about reality that you're not justified in believing.
You keep talking to me about what I believe when I've never said that I believe anything based on what your definition of the word is.
You said you think that some things are more likely than other things, right? So when you think that, that's a form of believing something, right? I think that this is more likely than that. That is obviously the same thing as saying I believe that this is more likely than that, right? Thinking and believing.
Thinking and believing are different things.
And in what way? Can you distinguish them? When you think that something is true, how is that different from believing that something is true? Isn't belief mentally assenting to the truth of something? Thinking that it's true? A mental process of... Right, mentally assenting to the truth of something. That's my definition of faith. Faith and belief, they're synonymous. It's mentally assenting to the truth of something. You do that, you mentally assent to this understanding of something being more likely than something else. So I would call that faith. You can choose to not call it faith, but it's basically the same thing as faith. That's what faith is.
Here's the thing. Again, what happens with the Venn diagram is there are certain aspects of the definition of the word belief or faith where you and I overlap. But as soon as I say that I believe something or I have faith in something, you're going to take that to mean something that I don't mean.
What have I taken it to mean that you don't mean?
You have taken it to mean there's all kinds of absolute in your world. That if I believe something, that I believe it like 100%.
And I'm saying if there's no absolutes, then knowledge can't exist and truth can't, like you can't come to truth. And I care about truth. If you don't care about truth, then you have an absurd worldview.
It's not that I don't care about truth. I care about truth a great deal. I also understand that as finite beings with finite consciousnesses, that it's not actually possible for us to perceive the true nature of reality, and therefore to have any absolute faith, any absolute truth, or any absolute knowledge.
Is that absolutely true? Is that true? Is that always true?
I'm not getting in that circular thing with you.
Well, no. That's an important thing. That's refuting. You're refuting yourself.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are.
The other thing that I would offer you is that if you believe that you have a finite consciousness and that it's informed by the infinite,
right?
It's not actually possible for your finite to comprehend infinity.
If God makes it possible, yes it is, because God can do what he wants, right? God is powerful.
But then your consciousness wouldn't be finite, it would be infinite.
No, it would be receiving information from the infinite consciousness.
Right, I get that you're receiving information, but what I'm saying
that doesn't make it unlimited.
Information goes through your finite consciousness and your own filters and your own experience. And assuming that you do have a relationship with God and that God does speak to you, that what you hear is going to be put through your own filters. And especially when you go to speak to somebody else about what God told you, it's definitely going to be put through your filters and through the English language, which is the language of war and conquest and domination.
Well, it's
not really possible to use the English language without oppressing other people.
No. See, God communicates through the Bible. He uses language. He inspired people to write down words that he wanted written down that communicate certain concepts. He created our minds with the ability to understand concepts. He created the whole system of him informing our minds, and he gave our minds the ability to understand the concepts. So we understand the concepts that God gave us, and we believe them. And that's how he communicates truth to us. That's how truth can be known. If you don't have that, then you could never know, because you could always be wrong. Because for all you know, your consciousness is deceiving you.
Absolutely.
And it's a terrible thing to put faith in.
But I'm not putting faith in it. That's the whole thing.
You're mentally assenting to the truth that certain things in your mind are more likely than other things to be true.
Likely, but
right,
that's different.
right.
That's different than it just being true.
Right. So you're putting blind faith in the concept of probability.
I'm not putting blind faith in the concept of probability.
Right, because there's no way to demonstrate that one thing is more probable than another thing. Just because something has happened in the past more than another thing doesn't make it more probable in the future. That is fallacious thinking. Fallacious thinking.
If we're talking about like flipping coins, then yeah, it is fallacious thinking. But if we're talking about a causal relationship, that when I do something, it has caused something else to happen, and that has happened over and over and over again, it becomes every data point that I collect on that, it becomes more and more likely that the next time I do it,
yeah, but you can't demonstrate the cause is actually happening. You can't prove that causation even exists. You can't prove that something is causing something else. You're choosing arbitrarily to believe that certain things cause other things.
No, not choosing arbitrarily to believe it.
Yes, you are.
No.
Why do you believe that causation exists? You've chosen to.
Again, I believe is a funny word in this conversation because I kind of hold it to be more likely true that it's causational because of the close relationship of the correlation, right? Correlation does not equal causation, right? If I have one data point where I put a key in an ignition and I turn it and the car starts, I only have one data point. That doesn't really tell me anything.
Right.
Right. But if I talk to a person who understands the physicality of the thing and has taken it apart and tells me, hey, this is designed so that when you turn this key, that engine is going to start. It's like, okay, now it seems like there might be a causal relationship, and then there's a correlation and there's another correlation, and pretty soon I have 10,000 data points of correlation and outside information that it's causation. Well, it's pretty likely that that's a causation.
And if all of that could be illusory, you have no proof that causation exists.
Yeah, I have no absolute proof. And
right.
I live in a worldview where I'm totally comfortable with not having absolute proof.
That's an absurd worldview, man.
Really
That's a terrible thing to put faith in. You need to put your faith in what's revealed from God in the Bible.
No.
The whole of the Bible, the biblical worldview that grounds correct thinking, that justifies beliefs. Because you have an absurd worldview that can't justify beliefs, man. You can't come to the truth.
To justify beliefs.
You can't come to the truth in your worldview. Truth should matter to you.
I can't come to absolute truth, and truth does matter to me, and I'm always seeking what's more true than other things.
Is it absolutely true that you can't come to absolute truth?
I don't know.
You don't know? Okay, then you shouldn't say it. You shouldn't make statements when you don't know, right?
Because everything that I say is based on data points. Faith in likelihood, faith in probability.
Right. Faith in the belief that probability exists. Faith in the belief that data points exist. How do you demonstrate that probability exists? How do you know that something's more probable than anything else?
Again, it's based on data points.
And those data points aren't real data points because they could be illusions in your mind, right? So they're not.
Totally.
So okay, yeah. You can't know what probability is if there's no way to know what data points are.
Right, but see, here's again where I come back to the idea of functionality, is that you are living from your perspective. You're looking at my worldview and saying, well, if you can't know anything 100% for certain, then you can't accomplish anything. You can't make any decisions. You shouldn't make any statements. How can you live your life? And I'm saying that that's, like, again, a gross misunderstanding of my worldview, and I keep coming back to functionality because the actions that I take, the statements that I make, the way that I live my life functions so far based on the function of the experience, and I'm open to it changing. If it starts to not function, then I'll change it.
Yeah, and you can't know it's true in that worldview in which you put faith in limited consciousness to understand what's functional and what's not functional, and what actually happens and what doesn't happen. Because you don't know that it's actually functional. If it's not actually happening, then it's not functional, right? That's not a functional way to live. If you're just trusting in what could be illusory, you don't know that you're driving your car. Maybe you're not. So is that functional? No, it's not. It's not functional. Because it's not. It doesn't make sense to believe in that.
The action itself is functional. To think that the action is going to go the same way that it's always gone is also functional.
No, it's not.
Yes.
Because you don't know that it's going the way it's always gone. You don't know that it's going to go the way it's always gone.
Right.
Right. So you shouldn't put faith in that.
Again, we're coming back to this point where you keep saying the same thing that doesn't make any sense, which is that if I don't know something to be 100% absolute truth, then I can't take action on it. And that's just not true.
I'm saying you can take, like in the biblical worldview, you can take actions and not know that something is 100% true. But I'm talking about like worldview foundations, epistemological foundations, in which in the Christian worldview, there's an epistemological foundation in which basics of reality are revealed to us by God, who has all knowledge and reveals to our limited consciousness what's true. But I'm saying that just the basic building blocks of reality, the basics of how reality works, if they're not revealed to us from the all-knowing being, everything just falls apart. And I'm saying you don't have that in your worldview, and so even the basics of living just makes truth impossible. It just makes knowledge impossible.
It makes absolute truth and absolute knowledge impossible, which is not important to me to have those things.
But when you're assuming that absolute truth exists when you say there's no absolute truth, right? Because you're assuming that that's absolutely true.
No.
Because if absolute truth doesn't exist, then it does exist.
Again, as I've said about 6 or 8 times at this point, all the statements that I make are based on me thinking that it's probably likely true.
Okay.
None of it is absolute. None of it is like 100%.
Yeah, and that's a bad worldview to put faith in. You can't come to truth in that worldview.
But I don't put faith in it.
You do. You believe that certain things are more likely than other things. That's faith. That's mentally assenting to the truth of something. That something is more likely than another thing. You're putting faith in the belief that probability exists. That some things are more likely than other things. That's what you're putting faith in.
I'm noticing probability. I'm noticing correlations.
No, you're putting faith in the belief that things will be like the past. That like the future will be like the past. But you're not justified in putting faith in that.
Limited amount of faith in that.
Yeah, and you're not justified in doing that.
Sure I am.
No, you're not. You just arbitrarily choose to believe that the future is going to be like the past.
It's not arbitrary.
It is.
Because it keeps coming back to functionality.
And it's not functional because you don't know the true nature of reality.
Because here's the thing, is that let's assume that I have this worldview that you think that I have, and that